In the next handful of videos, we're going to look at how to author questions within the iMath AS system. So to do that, we've got to get some things set up. We've got to get some kind of environment set up for us. So I have a course homepage pulled open here. I have one for this tutorial series. And from the left-hand side of the course homepage, there is a section for questions. And one of the links is libraries. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that libraries link. Now, most questions are kind of categorized into libraries, and so you can create libraries to essentially categorize your questions, which makes it a little easier to find the questions that you're looking for. So it's a good idea to always put the questions that you write within some kind of library. If you don't do that, they're going to get put in like an unassigned library that's personal to you and nobody else can access them. So it's usually a good first step to create a library. And so from this library page, you can manage your libraries. So I've got a list here. You may not see all of these. Some of these might be private to me. But you can press this Add New Library button. I'll just do this for tutorial purposes. And I'll just call this Test. And then there's a rights category. So you have a few options here. Open to group, private to others. You have closed to all, which would be like private. The very bottom one, open to all, means that anybody on the system can actually access this library, use questions from it, and add questions to it. So if you want to allow people to use questions from your library, you'll probably want to use open to all. There's a sort order, which is basically decides how to order your questions within the library. This can always be changed later. I'm going to go ahead and keep it at creation date. You can change the parent library, so you can move things around if you want. And I'll go ahead and press Save Changes. So now we see that this test library shows up here. We can modify it using the modify link. You can actually add some subcategories in here, which is pretty nice, kind of like subfolders. I won't do that now, but you'll notice that I have some other libraries that are actually categorized with sublibraries. So you can create like a folder structure here. A folder structure within this library setup, but I'll keep mine as just one root level folder. Okay, so now let's get started with actually starting with questions. So if we go back to the course homepage, we see that there's a manage link on the left-hand side under the questions category. If I click on that, it'll pull open a page. You probably won't have as many questions sitting down here, so this table might be kind of empty on yours. But there's a lot of buttons here, and the first one is in libraries. So this is like, what libraries do we want to look in? So to start, we'll select a library, and we'll select the library that we want to work in. In this case, we're going to use this test library that we just set up. So I'll hit Use Libraries. And it's very important that you press the search button after you do that. That basically just searches for questions within that test library, which we don't expect to be any since we just created this library. Now there's this search box, and you can actually search questions within this library. You can search all of the libraries. I mean, you have some options for like searching things based on their titles or their ID numbers, things like that. So if we want to create a question and put it in this library, we can press this Add New Question button. So if we do that, it'll pull open a question authoring page, which is kind of big and scary at first, and I'll cover that in another video. But we'll just give this a description. I'll just call it Test Question 1. I'm going to go ahead and just save this, and it'll add it right into that library. So now within our test library, we have a test question 1. We can preview it. We have an action. So this dropdown means we can modify it, we can template it, we can delete it if we don't want it, or we can transfer it to somebody else if we want. So that's one way to get set up with the library and start adding questions to it. Now, if you add questions this way, those questions aren't going to be placed in any kind of assessment. They're just sitting within this library. And then you'd have to pull these questions manually from the library into an assignment. Sometimes that's nice, and that'll be what you want to do. Another option is to create an assessment. I'm going to go ahead and just create a sample assessment here. I'm not going to do anything fancy with it. I'll just give it a name. And then it'll pull you into this Add/Remove Questions page. So I'm going to go back to the home page where we see the sample assessment. If you want to get to the questions page, you can click the gear icon and then press the questions link. So that'll take us to this questions page. And if we want, we can select the library that we just created. So we'll hit this test library, we'll search it, and then it'll pull open all of the questions within the test library. So if we wanted to, we could add this test question 1 to our assessment, if we wanted to do that. Another nice option is, once we have this test library pulled open, we can press Add New Question. There's this Add New Question button, and if we click on that, I'm just going to give this a title of Test Question 2. I'll go ahead and just save this, and then we get a prompt where we can either just return to the assessment without doing anything, we can add the question to the assessment, or we could add question to the assessment using the defaults for the assessment. So we'll do this first option here, this add question to assessment using defaults. What that does is add the question in to our actual assessment, as well as adding it to the library that we had pulled open. Now the second method is the one that I prefer, but there's certain circumstances where you want to use this method and certain circumstances where you'll want to use the other method.